The premise you clicked is real. The same magazine that once celebrated Kylie Jenner later alleged the numbers that put her on its cover were inflated. According to Forbes on May 29, 2020, filings tied to Kylie Cosmetics contradicted earlier claims, forcing the magazine to strip back the billionaire title it had helped create. In this video, we're going to pull apart exactly how a glossy narrative outpaced the math, why new documents flipped the story, and how a masterclass in PR turned into a public reckoning. Here's the common belief. Kylie Jenner became the youngest self-made billionaire by building a wildly profitable beauty empire, then cashed out when a blue-chip conglomerate paid top dollar for the brand. The images were irresistible: lip kits flying off shelves, lines wrapping around Ulta stores, and a family CEO who never missed a headline. But here's the contrarian take. The billionaire label wasn't just about sales, it was about access, optics, and valuation theater. When real receipts surfaced, the story didn't merely change, it snapped. So here's the plan. First, we'll show you what changed on paper and why those numbers mattered more than the hype. Then we'll rewind to how the title was minted in the first place and the lengths a savvy PR machine allegedly went to keep it alive. Finally, we'll decode how brand valuations, earnouts, and tax math can make or break titles and reputations. By the end, you'll know what was inflated, why it flipped, and how the game is really played. Start with the receipts that broke the spell. In November 2019, beauty giant Coty agreed to buy 51% of Kylie Cosmetics for $600 million, implying a $1.2 billion valuation for the brand. Because Coty is public, deal-related numbers eventually surfaced. In its own materials, Coty indicated that Kylie Cosmetics generated about $177 million in revenue in the 12 months before the deal, and that sales had risen roughly 40% from 2018. Do the basic math. That pegs 2018 revenue near $125 million, not the $360 million figure that had been widely repeated in earlier coverage. The moment those figures were out, the narrative had a problem. If 2018 was closer to $125 million, then the company was far smaller than the story everyone was celebrating. This wasn't about tiny variances. A one-third of $1 billion claim versus a low nine-figure reality changes everything: margins, cash flow, and most importantly, the personal net worth math underpinning that billion-dollar title. Analysts on the Coty calls were surprised because the business looked smaller than expected. And when the filings suggested Kylie's skin was on track for a fraction of the early claims, the pattern hardened. The light around the brand had been brighter than the ledger. Now, rewind to the creation of the myth. In July and August of 2018, Forbes put Kylie on its cover and later crowned her the youngest self-made billionaire in March 2019. That framing was controversial on its own, but the real engine wasn't semantics. It was the story of a hyper-profitable direct-to-consumer rocket ship amplified by a retail expansion at Ulta that generated headline-grabbing sell-through. The halo effect was intoxicating: limited edition drops, social media urgency, and a narrative of unstoppable growth. Inside this dance, access mattered. Forbes later wrote that the Jenner camp opened doors to mansions and accountants' offices and provided tax returns that the magazine said were likely forged. Kylie denied that claim publicly and called the report inaccurate and assumption-driven. But the bigger picture is this: when a publication relies on figures provided by a subject with every incentive to look bigger, the room for overstatement grows. That's not unique to celebrity brands. It's baked into how media, influencers, and capital interact. A family with a direct line to audience attention can drive massive demand, then point to demand as proof of enterprise value, then use that value to justify investor interest, and around it goes. When the numbers live behind private doors, it's hard to separate legend from ledger. For nearly 2 years, the aura of the billionaire title was both a branding asset and a negotiating chip, until an acquisition dragged the numbers into daylight. Now the part everyone misunderstands: a $1.2 billion brand valuation does not mean an individual is, in cash terms, a billionaire. A valuation is an estimate, not a bank balance. When a buyer pays $600 million for 51%, you still have taxes, transaction fees, and often, earnouts or performance-based components. On paper, yes, the implied value of the remaining stake plus cash can nudge a personal net worth into 10-figure territory. But when the underlying revenue base is smaller, the remainder stake is worth less than the headlines imply, and after-tax cash is not equal to a headline valuation. That's why new, lower revenue figures ripple straight into net worth recalculations. Forbes recalculated, the title evaporated, the internet lit up, And here's the power of PR in the middle of all that. The camera never shows a footnote. The viral images are the cover, the Ulta lines, the deal handshake. In late 2018, Ulta's initial Kylie rollout delivered eye-popping numbers in the first 6 weeks, and everyone took that early burst as a proxy for durable run rate demand. But retail launches often spike, then normalize. Meanwhile, direct-to-consumer brands can look deceptively fat at the top line if you don't reconcile returns, promotions, and the cost to acquire customers at scale. Seed Beauty handled manufacturing and fulfillment. Wholesale margins through a retailer aren't the same as pure DTC. The net of it, a beautiful front of house can hide a slimmer back of house, and that gap is where billionaire myths go to live. It's also crucial to remember the timing. In April 2020, Forbes was still using language that positioned Kylie as the youngest self-made billionaire. By the end of May, after digging into Cody's deal disclosures, the magazine reversed. That whiplash isn't just a gotcha moment. It shows how fragile celebrity wealth narratives are when they hinge on private claims. The same publication that anoints you can unwind you when better paperwork arrives. And if you're Cody, paying luxury multiples for an influencer brand, those numbers cut both ways. The social halo is priceless until it isn't, and investor confidence is sturdy until the spreadsheets change. Kylie's response was immediate and unequivocal. She went on Twitter, called the article inaccurate, and denied ever asking for any title or lying her way there. Reports at the time also noted the family's position that accusations of forged documents were false and defamatory. That denial matters. Public figures have every right to contest a narrative, especially when a report suggests wrongdoing. Forbes, for its part, stood by its story, anchoring its claims to the Cody receipts. No one in this drama lacked a megaphone, and that's part of the lesson. In modern celebrity capitalism, truth and trust battle in public, not in quiet conference rooms. If you zoom out, you can see why this title was worth fighting over. Billionaire isn't just a number, it's a positioning statement. It increases brand leverage in retail negotiations, commands higher licensing fees, and makes capital cheaper for future launches. It can tilt an acquisition committee toward a richer multiple. And for a family that runs on narratives, it fuels a flywheel where TV, social, product, and press drive each other. That's the power of being crowned, and the cost of being uncrowned. When Forbes walked it back, the same megaphone that sold the story broadcast the reversal, and that friction became part of Kylie's brand equity whether she liked it or not. Now let's talk mechanics, because this is the part people rarely spell out. Imagine a $1.2 billion enterprise value based on high-growth beauty comps. If the trailing revenue is actually $177 million, your multiple is nearly 7 times revenue. For a celebrity-led brand with concentration risk, that's aggressive. If 2018 revenue is closer to $125 million, you can justify the price if you believe in explosive growth, margin expansion, and sustained social conversion. But if growth is moderating, or if a retail pivot changes margins, then your valuation is leaning on hopes, not history. That's not fraud, that's the risk of future-based pricing. But when personal net worth headlines piggyback on that pricing, the public starts treating possibility as fact. The Cody receipts reminded everyone that possibility is not a spreadsheet line item. There's also an overlooked human factor. The youngest self-made billionaire framing created an expectations trap. Every subsequent KPI, sell-through, product expansion, international distribution, had to validate the crown. That incentivizes over-communication of positives and under-communication of headwinds. A PR strategist would tell you the moment the billionaire storyline becomes your brand spine, you're married to the multiple. A more conservative play is to underpromise, then let audited numbers do the talking. But conservative doesn't grab a cover. Critically, none of this erases the accomplishment. Kylie Cosmetics was and is a serious brand that made real money, changed beauty marketing, and pioneered social-first retail tactics. The Ulta partnership was a stroke of distribution genius. The packaging and drop culture shifted an entire aisle. None of that depends on billionaire math. What changed was the distance between an aura and an audit, and the public learned that in real time because a buyer with SEC reporting obligations forced the audit into view. So what's the payout for viewers who crave the truth behind the glam? It's not that Kylie never had money. It's that the billionaire storyline likely stood on legs that were part muscle, part mirrors. The filings cut the mirrors. The muscle remained. That's why Forbes didn't drop her to zero. It recalibrated. For brands and creators watching this, the message is simple. If your valuation depends on private claims, be ready for the day a partner's disclosure turns your headline into a math problem. And if you're using a media crown as a sales tool, remember that crowns come with receipts. Here's where this lands today. The billionaire label has migrated to other stars with different engines, tours, catalogs, and diversified holdings. Kylie's brand keeps selling lip kits. Coty positions the asset inside a broader turnaround story. The internet remembers the scandal because it had a villain and a twist. The magazine that made the myth broke it. But strip away the drama, and you see the system. Celebrity attention can compress years of brand building into months. Media can compound that attention into perceived value. And capital can cash out the perception until disclosures force a reset. And the next time you see a youngest ever headline, ask 3 questions. What exactly are the revenues? And does anyone outside the subject's team corroborate them? Why would a media outlet or buyer accept those figures at face value? What access do they get in return? And how are valuation and personal net worth being conflated in the telling? If you can't answer those, you're not looking at wealth, you're looking at marketing. To close, here's the takeaway. The lie wasn't a single forged page, so much as a collectively convenient story that everyone, from press to partner to public, had an incentive to believe. When real filings arrived, belief gave way to balance sheets. Titles fell, but the brand survived. That's the modern celebrity economy in a sentence. If you want more breakdowns like this, where the receipts cut through the hype, jump into our fresh Celebrity Tea playlist next. It's the blueprint for reading past headlines and seeing how the money, the media, and the motives really work.